Actually did talk to Daniel Jones. He was just like, you know, I'm happy that you're here. Daniel said he was trying to give me the ball. He saw a lot of pressure in his face, so, I mean, I can't control that, so.
I don't think everybody was on the same page on that. Bro. At least it didn't appear that way from Hard Knocks.
Giants fans aren't feeling so good about themselves, especially after what happened this past weekend. A familiar face returned to MetLife Stadium, and unfortunately, he almost had the most rushing yards he's ever had in an entire game. It's kind of crazy. Saquon Barkley actually turned down the opportunity to go for his record.
You're 13 yards away from your career high. I would love for you to get that.
Let them eat.
You sure?
Yeah, good. It's all good. I'd rather see the young boys eat.
But before we get to the content, we are currently on the grind to 1 million subscribers. We are 35,000 subscribers away from getting to that goal. So you want to help us reach that goal, sub and turn on your notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, work! We made $500 on Prize Picks this past Sunday, and fortunately, a lot of you guys tailed my picks on Instagram and Snapchat, and you guys let me know in my DMs. One of you even made $1,000 from my picks. Prize Picks is giving us another free square, meaning we only need to get one pick correct in order to 3x our money. All Anthony Edwards needs to do on opening night is score 1 point. Fortunately, we've been on a crazy streak, and if you haven't played Prize Picks, download the app or click in the link in the description down below and use my promo code microphone to get $100 when you make an entry of $5 or more. Then follow me on Instagram at @theflightmike or on Snapchat to get my picks for free. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? How can you not discuss the off-season version of Hard Knocks whenever you want to talk about the New York Giants? This was truly one of the cruelest iterations of Hard Knocks, and you could not have chosen a better team to follow in Hard Knocks than the New York Giants. The entire offseason, they were trying to figure out what they should do in regards to Saquon Barkley. And I understand that hindsight's 2020, but I actually understood the conflict that Joe Schoen had.
Hello?
Saquon.
Yeah, what's up?
You doing all right? The right thing to do is let you test the market and see what your value is. If you really want to be a Giant for life. Does that sound good?
Yeah. I mean, I already told you that where I want to be, so.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate y'all.
All right, Saquon, I'll talk to you.
You see, on one hand, there's no question about it. Saquon Barkley was the best weapon that the New York Giants have had since the departure of Odell Beckham Jr. The problem is he's been inconsistent throughout his Giants tenure. I mean, in his rookie season, he was prolific, averaging 5 yards per carry, over 1,300 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. In his second year, he had some injuries and his yards per carry averages dipped a little bit, but he still went over 1,000 yards rushing with 6 touchdowns. He got injured in his third season, and in his fourth season he was terrible, but I didn't really blame him for that because he was literally the only weapon that the Giants had, and Joe Judge was his head coach then. Regardless, he regressed to 3.7 yards per carry till the Brian Daboll era started in 2022. Saquon saw a resurgence under Brian Daboll because he was able to get the passing game going, so defenses didn't really fully commit to Saquon Barkley. Saquon would average 4.4 yards per attempt, but he couldn't come to an agreement on an extension with the New York Giants. The Giants and Saquon played a game of chicken, but they eventually agreed to a 1-year contract extension in which Saquon regressed once again, primarily because he was playing with a string of backup QBs, averaging 3.9 yards per carry and just under 1,000 rush yards. The issue with Saquon Barkley wasn't necessarily whether or not he was a productive player. It was clear he's a productive player, but it was whether or not he would be able to stay healthy. But it was really funny to watch this throughout the offseason because Schoen really didn't know whether or not he should extend Saquon.
I'm torn, Ed, because I still think he can play and I think he can help us. I didn't want to come in at a number because I really don't have a great idea where the market is. If you want to come back and be a Giant, let's try to make sense.
And I can also understand the argument that Saquon probably wouldn't have been the difference between winning a Super Bowl and not winning a Super Bowl. But at the same time, if you have Saquon Barkley and Malik Nabers on offense with Darius Slayton, that's a pretty solid wide receiver core. Those are fairly solid weapons for Daniel Jones. And after all, this was a make or break season for Daniel Jones. Despite the Giants trying to trade up with the New England Patriots to get Drake May, and despite the New York Giants general manager's son sounding like a better GM than the New York Giants general manager.
Who do you want me to take?
Give me a name.
Jaden Daniels. Trade up and get him.
Okay, if Jaden Daniels...
You only get this job once. I'm trying to win.
The New York Giants stood pat at the draft pick that they had and selected Malik Nabers. And you could just tell by Malik Nabers' facial expression, he wasn't necessarily excited about the team he got drafted to. The media would then ask Malik Nabers if he got in touch with his quarterback, Daniel Jones, and he literally called him Janiel Dones.
Talked with Daniel Jones yet?
I actually did talk to Daniel Jones. He was just like, I'm happy that you're here. We're gonna hit the ground running, and then he's gonna learn about me, I'm gonna learn about him, and we're gonna get together.
Now, we all know what happened with Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley would eventually leave the New York Giants and sign in quite possibly the greatest situation for him. And you literally get to see each and every week what Saquon Barkley is capable of when there's multiple dimensions to an offense, whether it's having a dual threat quarterback in Jalen Hurts, excellent wide receivers in Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Saquon Barkley has 658 rushing yards this year in 6 games played. Bear in mind, he had 952 rush yards last year in 14 games played. He's averaging an absurd 6 yards per carry so far, and this is without discussing what he brought to the table in receiving. He has an additional 100 yards as a receiver, without a doubt the best running back in the NFL today, and a move that paid off remarkably well for the Philadelphia Eagles, even though I said it was extremely risky when the Eagles decided to sign him. So fans were very excited to see how things were going to look when Saquon Barkley returned to MetLife Stadium, and he had his best game to date as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, averaging 10 yards per attempt, 17 attempts for 176 rushing yards. You couldn't even get those statistics if you played the New York Giants on rookie difficulty in Madden. And currently the Philadelphia Eagles only trail the Baltimore Ravens in rush yards per game with 166.7 rushing yards per game, whereas the New York Giants currently average 101.6 rush yards per game, averaging 3.9 yards per carry to the Philadelphia Eagles 5 yards per carry. The New York Giants are the 8th worst rushing team in the NFL. So fans are saying that Joe Schoen is a gigantic idiot for letting Saquon Barkley walk, and that also includes Bill Belichick.
I don't think Dable wanted to get rid of Saquon, and I certainly don't think John Mara wanted to get rid of Saquon. This seemed like kind of a general manager thing of, we don't think anybody will pay him, when kind of everybody in the league knew that he was going to go to the Eagles. I don't think everybody was on the same page on that. At least it didn't appear that way from Hard Knocks.
But things get way worse. You see, Malik Nabers has not been shy in regards to his criticism of Daniel Jones. And to be honest, I think Malik Nabers deserves Rookie of the Year, despite having 427 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns in 5 games played so far, primarily because you could tell a wide receiver is truly special if he's dominating with a quarterback like Daniel Jones. In the beginning of the season, Malik Nabers called out Daniel Jones for his inability to get him the football.
Just look over the film, see what ways we can give me the ball in space. Daniel said he was trying to give me the ball. He saw a lot of pressure in his face, so I can't control that.
And things got so much worse because following the New York Giants' embarrassing loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, where they only put up 3 points, Malik Nabers called out his quarterback once again.
Nothing really different. Watch the target tape. That was it. I was open.
Now here's the crazy part. On one hand, it's never a good look when a rookie wide receiver is calling out his quarterback, but you could find plays of Malik Nabers being wide open. If you take a look at this play, for instance, Daniel Jones lives up to his dinking and dunking moniker and doesn't even look at Malik Nabers' direction. If you take a look right over here, if you wait for the play to develop, which Daniel Jones had all the time in the world in this particular instance, Malik Nabers would have been wide open for a large gain, possibly even a touchdown, but Daniel Jones didn't even look in his direction. At the same time, you can make an argument that this isn't 100% Daniel Jones' fault. You take a look at this play, for instance, and yes, Malik Nabers was about to be open for a potential walk-in touchdown, and it's truly heartbreaking when you take a look at it. The man is wide freaking open over here. It's really unfortunate, but if you look at Daniel Jones, he didn't even have the opportunity to see Malik Nabers here. Right as Malik Nabers breaks free, Daniel Jones gets sacked. And you can make the same argument here once again. Right as Daniel Jones wants to look for a wide receiver, even though he doesn't look at Malik Nabers' direction, he gets sacked. But probably the worst part of all, and I guess this is why Malik Nabers is so frustrated to begin with, is on this particular play, 2nd and 11 in the second quarter, play action pass, Daniel Jones steps back, he's looking, and Malik Nabers is literally pointing at Darius Slayton, saying he's wide open. And Daniel Jones is able to find him, but I personally found this to be so funny. But when he does find him, he throws it right behind Darius Slayton and to the ground, which is just ridiculous considering how wide open Slayton was. Now for the Giants, they do have some opportunities to get back on track. They have two very difficult matchups versus the Pittsburgh Steelers and then the Washington Commanders. Then they get the Carolina Panthers before facing off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and probably the worst team in the NFC East in the Dallas Cowboys. So maybe they're able to turn it around, but at the end of the day, I think this is a team that knew what they were signing up for when the season started. They understood that Daniel Jones is on one of the cheapest contracts in the entire NFL. They have him under contract for another 2 years, but his dead cap is significantly less following the 2025 season. I personally think the strategy here is continue to build the team around Daniel Jones, draft star players like Malik Nabers, invest that capital wisely and try to get better on defense. And then once Daniel Jones's contract expires, that's when you take your quarterback of the future. You have a fresh 5 years with a QB that's getting underpaid to build around. Hopefully you could put him in a situation similar to what Caleb Williams has with the Chicago Bears or what Jaden Daniels has with the Washington Commanders. And then New York Giants football could come back. But until then, I don't think it's time to take a swing on a big quarterback. I don't think that Daniel Jones is your answer under center. He's proven to us multiple times at this point that he clearly isn't good enough to play the quarterback position. And I'm just being respectful, man. I mean, I've never seen an individual that got as much of a leash and as much leeway as Daniel Jones. I mean, the Giants reached for him in the 2019 NFL draft. Statistically, he proved to us that he could be a solid quarterback in his rookie year, but every year after that, he's kind of regressed until Brian Dable came along and Daniel Jones finessed the Giants into thinking that he could be a long-term starter under center. He plays terrible last year to the point where Brian Dable literally asks him, "Do you want them to fire me?" There's multiple clips of him just making terrible reads consistently, and it just doesn't seem like he's improving at all whatsoever. But I think his role for the New York Giants is just being the tank commander, and that's a pretty good role. The Giants just have to be realistic of where they're at. In my opinion, I think Schoen is at least better than Gettleman, but I don't necessarily have a tremendous amount of optimism in him. I mean, he was named the general manager of the New York Giants in 2022, and since 2022, he's had an up and down draft record. I know we all like to point out the fact that he drafted Evan Neal and Evan Neal's garbage, and I know Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't been able to build off of his remarkable 2023 season, but he still drafted Wan'Dale Robinson in the second round of the 2022 NFL draft. He drafted Daniel Bellinger, but in 2023, he drafted Deonte Banks, who is one of the worst defensive backs in the NFL. And then this past year, he drafted Malik Nabers. He let Saquon Barkley walk in free agency, and he is the individual that extended Daniel Jones. So I don't know how much confidence I have in Schoen's ability to build this roster, but I still think he's a hell of a lot better than Gettleman. At the end of the day, I think the Giants are this incredible combination: poor management, horrible quarterback play, and a head coach that just should not have taken this job to begin with, because I don't think a lot of this is Daboll's fault. But if you're a Giants fan, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Some of you guys might even be thinking that I'm talking this much trash about the Giants because I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, but the truth is, I think the Cowboys are even worse off than the New York Giants, and I made a full video on that, and I'll leave it in the end screen. I'll meet you guys over there. It's a pretty brutal video for me to relive through. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.